All right, what's going on, folks? Earthmaster here. It is Monday night, August 31st, so that last day in August 2020, of course. Wonder what next month is going to be full of probably lots of surprises, no doubt. 8:05 p.m. West Coast time out here in smoky California. Once again, taking a look at the Earthquake 3D globe out there. Showing, well, a lot of old earthquake activity. There has been some new large quakes happening out there throughout the 24-hour period. 5.8 way down here south in the southern part of the Atlantic Rift region. Also a 6.2 in the Indian Ocean, which occurred quite some time ago. Some rather large quakes happening, I'd say, south of the equator region. Go ahead and bring this back just a couple more hours so we can see some of the other activity there. That 6.5 there was a pretty big one. It's covered up underneath there, underneath that 4.8, but it's there. 6.5. Let's go ahead and bring these magnitudes up a little bit so we can see better. There we go. This is all the larger earthquake activity happening out here today, except for that 3.3 in Oregon. We'll get to that here in a little bit. Most of this activity, like I mentioned, occurring in the southern part of the globe, at least the equator southward for the most part. You can see the grid here. Equator region, right about there. South, a lot of activity in the south here, folks. One minor earthquake up here. I'd say moderate earthquake, just off the coast of what is that? Looks like Russia up there. So that's kind of new. That's definitely kind of new. But the activity to talk about right now is what's happening out here along the west coast. Some interesting activity here, lighting up out here in California, Nevada, and Oregon. The most recent earthquake there. Let's go ahead and let me see if I can follow this. There we go. The most recent quake here being this 3-pointer. They got this set at 47 kilometers north of Dino, Nevada. Not for sure why they use that reference points there in Nevada, considering it is up there in Oregon. You can see the epicenter. Let's go ahead and zoom in here a tad bit. See exactly where this took place at here in Oregon. I'm familiar with this part of Nevada here because they had a pretty good earthquake swarm there years back, which I went and checked out. Eastern Oregon up here, not a whole lot of familiar points out here, but there is definitely some fault systems out there with this 3.5 here. Looks like the Steens fault system, at least in this region here. Not for sure if anybody felt this earthquake. I really don't think they did, being way out there, a depth of about 11 kilometers. It has been reviewed. Nobody feeling it. Very unpopulated out there in that region of Nevada. Actually a really cool place to go camp out and live off the grid out there in the high desert region there. So that's just one of a couple earthquakes out here that's taken place. It's kind of ramping up, I would say, here in the western part of the United States. They did have some earthquake activity here in Nevada, back to back. Just drop these or raise these magnitudes a little bit so we can see those two earthquakes right there. 3.4, and let's see, I had a couple back-to-back ones right there, 3.5 and a 3.1, all happening pretty much within an hour or two of each other there. This kind of activity just ramped up all of a sudden, and it's I think it's a given sign there that pressure out here along the west coast is currently enabled. I do like to do the all magnitude so we can see the full brunt of what's going on out here. And you can see a little bit of activity south of San Jose there on the San Andreas fault system, and some activity up north there, north of the region near the geysers. But we can go here to this little earthquake here. Kind of looks like it's just off the San Andreas fault, possibly on the, what's this fault system here, the Sargent fault zone. Southeastern section. Not a big one, but it is a sign of obvious pressure right in the region. A little bit of earthquake activity south of Bakersfield, kind of near the Grapevine region. That's a 1.2, not a big one again, but still activity. Any kind of earthquake activity is obvious sign of pressure, especially when you have it on such a large scale like this right now. up and down the west coast and into the Intermountain West region here, just kind of lighten up throughout the area. And this earthquake up here in Oregon is kind of a little surprise. We don't see a whole lot of earthquake activity out there. The depth of that, once again, let's see, what was that, about 10 kilometers or so? Yeah, well, about 11.9 kilometers or so for that 3.3. So it's relatively quiet, folks, on the eastern, or I should say western part of the Pacific Ring of Fire over here towards, well, obviously Japan, Indonesia. All these areas right now are super duper quiet. There's only a couple sporadic ones, and this place here is normally booming with earthquake activity on any given day, except for when the west coast is active, like right now. We're seeing the activity up here along the North American plate, the Pacific plate boundary, and of course into the Intermountain West region. This is where it's at right now, folks. A lot of movement going on, and this is could be a potential place where we could see a little bit larger earthquake, especially with the movement focused and the pressure focused out here along the west coast and the Intermountain West region. A lot of activity out there spread out through Oklahoma and other parts there through the Tennessee Valley, it looks like, as well. So yeah, it just looks like a lot going on there, while the western part, as I mentioned, relatively quiet. There's a new little earthquake up there, looks like in Ashkasham. Yeah, how do you say that? Ashkasham, Afghanistan. 4.6 there, 158 kilometers deep. That's really deep. Of course, they had that 6.2 down there in the Indian Ocean. But still quiet, folks, around the Pacific Ring of Fire, except out here on the west coast. So we're watching this area possibly for further movement out here. I've always said whenever this area here is active, the activity over here quiets down, and that's kind of how it's looking right now. I think once we see some more further new movement over here, then we should see things start quieting down out here along the west coast and the Intermountain West region. But for now, that's looking like the hot spot for activity. We can check out where the tremor map go here real quick. See if there's any tremor being reported out there. I'm sure there is, especially with the movement out there today in Oregon and Nevada on a wide scale. See that? All the way from Vancouver Island through Washington, Oregon, just right at the border of Northern California there. So this is tremor that's being picked up by super duper sensitive equipment made to monitor some slow slippage along the Cascadia subduction zone. These are not fault thrust or earthquakes, but just pretty much subduction movement, tremor, if you will. Of course, with the Juan de Fuca plate, North American plate over here, and then the subduction part, that's what it's picking up right here in that region. But way down there, not at the surface, way down there in the subduction area. So that's movement going on there. And it's something to watch. I've always mentioned that whenever we see this, and this is only just today, that's a pretty good amount of tremor for just today's activity, considering it's been relatively quiet over the past 3 or 4 days or so in this region. Now we're seeing a pretty good uptick, and also some surface quaking there into Oregon and Nevada, obviously. So it's something to watch. I've always mentioned whenever we see tremor on the uptick like this on a wide section of it, on a wide section of the Cascadia subduction zone, that pressure is being back built up here into the lock section. It has to. If you really think about it, you got the subducting part continuing to go downward, but no breakage up here, no release of pressure along the Cascadia along the locked section of the Cascadia subduction zone. So it's building up. And, how much stress it can handle, who knows? When it's going to happen, when it's going to rupture, who knows? 2020 could obviously be the year. It would not surprise me. But it's definitely good to be on guard, folks, especially with all the activity going on out here around the world. It wouldn't surprise me. So, let's see what else we got to talk about out here. Yellowstone, obviously really quiet, folks, right now. I don't see any type of movement, any weird readings, no microquakes going on. So everything's looking fairly good out there for now. Yellowstone's looking pretty good. So then once again the other map here. But yeah, we got to keep an eye on the west coast out here. It's kind of interesting, earthquake activity in Oregon out there. Just be on guard, folks. As always, you know, it's a good thing to be on guard. Let me tell you, I did add the a little deal up here, West Yellowstone. You can see that here, pretty close to the well, obviously the Yellowstone National Park, right? 42 degrees, mostly cloudy and whatnot. Kind of added the weather onto that, just to you know, just kind of make it more interactive, I guess, if you will, or more more informative. Because earlier when I was watching this webcam here, I seen a lot of steam, a lot of smoke coming up from these geysers, and I'm thinking, man, it's got to be cold up there. So I looked at the map. Sure enough, it was down there. It was really cold. A little cold front, I guess, just went through. Possibly earlier today. I'm not for sure when it went through, but looks like maybe an early hint of winter up there. I kind of wish we had some of that weather here in California, but it's going to be quite a while before we experience 42 degrees here where I live. So yeah, I added that. We'll keep it up there for a little while, and if I switch up the webcam, say to Tehachapi or Southern California, wherever, I'll add that weather back on there as well. It's just kind of a neat little updating interactive app that displays the, you know, current conditions and whatnot in that specific area. So seismograph stations right now looking pretty quiet, unactive at the moment. Of course, that could obviously change whenever an earthquake comes into the region. We'll definitely see these spikes flatline the data that's coming in here. So right now, all conditions look pretty quiet and mellow. So looks like that China Lake station popped right back up there as well. That's been down for a couple hours. Sometimes the data comes in and fades out, and then it'll come back. So I always leave it up there because I know it's going to come back. So anyway, folks, I hope everyone has a good night out there. It is Monday night. I think I'm going to call it a night. But look at all that old earthquake activity out there. Look at all the red rings that we were talking about. Just pretty quiet and dead out there in this part of the world. You know, while the west coast out there looking like the hot spot for right now of activity. So we'll see how this night goes, folks. Unless something else happens, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Stay safe out there. Always have an earthquake plan, and we'll chat at you guys tomorrow sometime. Stay safe.